Hi there. It gives me great pleasure to tell you about our Colostrum project, which we set up a year ago with Farming Connect. So this was for the lambing season 2021. And just at the start, I want to say thanks very much to my colleague Philippa and Rosie, Kate Phillips and Ginny, who's done a lot of the number crunching for the project. So I'm going to start by talking plan, prevent, protect. This is not a surprise to a lot of people. If you want lambing success, there are these three things that are really important. Planning ahead is analysing forage, thinking about a good quality diet, making sure newborns are looked after well. We need to maximise colostrum. We need to minimise stress in the lambing shed. And we want to monitor colostrum quality and make sure it gets from the ewe to the lamb. And one of the ways we can do that is keep good records. So that's planning. We want to prevent problems. We prevent disease by making sure if we're lambing outside, we've got good shelter, that it's clean, dry, draft free for when we're lambing inside with good fresh bedding. We want ewes and lambs to be turned out as quickly as possible. We want there to be good hygiene in the lambing shed, and we want all our equipment to be clean and disinfected. Basically, we want animals to be born into a hygienic, appropriate, sheltered situation to prevent unnecessary disease. And then we want to protect. So one of the ways we protect is to ensure that ewes themselves are in the correct body condition. They've had a quality balanced diet, they're fully vaccinated, they're not lame, they're dagged, they're clean. If a ewe is fit and well fed, she's in correct body condition, she's getting good nutrition, then you can see that stack of gold in her udder. We need her to make good colostrum. And the way we protect the lamb is to have good quality colostrum that's presented quickly enough to the lamb and of enough quantity, because colostrum is gold. When a lamb is full of colostrum, they are best protected against neonatal diseases, watery mouth, the like. That's how we get lambing success. So we need to plan ahead, prevent disease and protect both the ewe and the lamb. And colostrum is gold. We know it. Colostrum is made up of two vital parts. There's the immunoglobulins, which protect against disease, and we now know that a ewe's colostrum is about 20 grams of immunoglobulin G per litre when she lambs, but it quickly declines. So by 1 to 2 days time, not only is the colostrum not so good, it's declined in quality, but the lamb cannot absorb it. So two things are happening in that first 24-36 hours of life. The lamb can't absorb more IgG because the gut is closed, and the ewe's colostrum is not so good. We also know a 4 kilogram lamb requires 20 grams of IgG as quickly as possible for good passive transfer. So that's why a lamb needs about a litre by the time they're 24 hours old. The other thing that's really important in colostrum is the energy. We know a ewe's colostrum is about 15% fat, so when a lamb is born, they have a store of energy in their brown fat, but this quickly diminishes within 5 hours. So they need colostrum to keep themselves, to give them the energy. So colostrum is made up of immunoglobulins and energy. And colostrum really is gold. It is the most important thing we can make sure lambs are given early in life. Quickly, good quality and good quantity. So let me tell you about the colostrum projects. We sent out details to 147 Welsh farmers through Farming Connect discussion groups. We said, please collect colostrum from ewes on the day they lamb, because we know it declines quickly, and test a small sample using a Brix refractometer. There's a picture of a Brix there. I'm just opening my box here to show you. I've got one just here. The refractometer gives us an estimate of total proteins and estimates the level of immunoglobulins. Now, we told farmers that 22% was good and less than 80% was poor. We'll actually revise that as we tell you about the project, but that's what we were working on last. That was the best anyone knew. Across the country, we've always used 22% because that's what they use in dairy cows. Most of the research has been done in dairy cows. Up until our project with Farming Connect last year, we hadn't got information for ewes. And we also said to people, if you're prepared to take part, you must commit to testing 10 ewes colostrum in the first week of lambing and 10 ewes in the last week of lambing. We wanted people to be up to date with their measure to manage paperwork, and we asked them to get data for us. This was the paperwork, the data. It wasn't hugely complicated. You can see here we asked people to write the date, the tag number of the ewe, her breed, her age, her body condition score, 1 out of 5, whether was she lambing inside or outside, how many live lambs did she have, how many dead lambs did she have, tell us something about the udder, and we allowed people to use whatever descriptors they wanted. How easy was she to strip? Was she good? Was it average? Was it poor or hard? And then what was a colostrum quality? What colour was it? And then to measure on the Brix. And then we also asked people to return some information on their pre-lambing diet. We produced a video. It's not exactly Hollywood, but anyway, you can still access it via YouTube. And as I said already, we were telling people 22% was the cutoff. So below 22% poor, above 22% we said was okay. We have now revised that a little bit. And basically, you wipe clean the glass surface, you place a couple of drops of colostrum onto the blue glass surface with a clean syringe, you lower the cover, and you allow 15 seconds, and then you look through the refractometer and read what happens. You have to hold it up to natural light to be able to read the refractometer. The training video is still there, anyone can go and look at it and learn how to use a refractometer. Sometimes people had all white screens, and that's because the colostrum was better than 32. You can see 32 is the highest figure. And actually, what I forgot to say is before you test your colostrum, you actually put a drop of water on the refractometer, and we expect water to have the line here. So it's white below the 0 and blue above it. That calibrates the refractometer. If water's not at 0, you can adjust the little thing at the top, and once you've calibrated it, then you do it. All of that's in the training video. Now, this is a bit much on this slide. Apologies, I've basically copied from this paper. Between us making that training video and now, this paper came out in 2021. It's from Switzerland. Basically, these guys here, Kessler and co., they looked at cattle samples, goat samples and sheep samples. And what they found is they suggested actually the figures we were using were not correct. They would agree that good quality colostrum has 50 mg per mil in cattle. Actually, it's only 20 mg in sheep and goats. Those are the thresholds. So we're looking at 20 mg per mil in sheep and goats. And then the cutoff, the measure on the Brix, they suggested 19% for cows, 21% for does, for goats, and 26.5% for ewes. So once this paper had come out, that's why we've changed the cutoff. Between us making the training video and doing the and writing the results, we actually think 26.5% is better. You can notice this is the first time people properly said what should the Brix be in ewes. It was only published in 2021, and they only had 100 sheep samples there. It was a small study, and it just shows that our study is really important because it's a very big study. So, it was a big study. Here we go. We sent Brixes to 147 farmers. 64 of those farmers sent samples, submitted data back to us. So we have a total of 1,295 ewe samples. This is the biggest study we are aware of ewe colostrum. Fantastic results. Most farms submitted 20 samples. That's what we asked them for. Some guys here, Mr. Number 13, gave us 96 samples. Amazing. Some gave us a lot. We only asked for 20. The blue lines are people lambing inside. The red lines were ewes lambed outside. So you can see most of our data was inside ewes. The age of the ewes, it was kind of exactly what you'd expect. There were a handful of ewe lambs, but predominantly we had shearlings, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, exactly what you'd expect. Breeds, 30 different breeds. You might disagree. We actually categorised the breeds into hill type of ewe, a maternal type, what we count as a rare breed, maternal type, and a terminal type of animal. You can argue the mixture, that's how it was. I think probably the most contentious here would be the chamois, which they adamant on their website it's a hill breed. Some people suggest that's more terminalized. You know, we're not going to split hairs on where the breeds go. We just thought it was helpful to put the hill types all together, the maternal type all together, you know, an Aberdale, a Dorset, a Clin, a mule, maternal type, and a terminal type. So a Texel, a Charolais, a Hampshire, a Suffolk. And we could use that to analyse the data. You looked at body condition scores, really helpful. And pretty much as you would expect, most people were body condition scoring to a half a score. Most of the ewes were body condition score of 3. We had a few that we would consider too low for lambing, and we had a few that we would consider pretty fat for lambing, but pretty much as you would expect for body condition scores. I said we asked people to describe the udder. In a way, we didn't actually ask this in a particularly good way, because we let people define it themselves. And actually, if we'd been a bit more prescriptive, we might have been able to do more with the results. But actually, you know, there are a few. We said if someone said it's got mastitis, or it's warm and hot, or we would suggest that sounds like it's mastitic. For about 4% of them used terms that were a bit like mastitis, but more or less, you know, the vast majority of udders people said were normal or average. This is about 70%. But then, as you can see, full description there. And then this was also a question we didn't ask in a particularly good way. We asked people to say what colour of colostrum. If we did this again, we would actually get a paint chart and get people to say on a scale, because you know, what's the difference between cream white, yellow cream, yellow white? It's quite difficult to say how these. But anyway, you know, a few numbers said they were watery. The red, that doesn't look good for colostrum, does it? What's dark yellow? What's the difference between dark and dark yellow? Actually, in retrospect, we didn't ask that question in the best way, but we're learning as well. If you remember, I said in the training video, we said we would use a 22% cutoff. With a 22% cutoff, the vast majority of farms, every single ewe hit the cutoff. Actually, from getting good results in the data, because most of the ewes were really high, above 22%, it meant we couldn't analyse it very well because so many passed. And actually, if we used the cutoff that the Swiss study recommended, 26.5%, which people would now argue is the most appropriate cutoff to use for sheep, we actually then see we've got much more variation in the samples that were sent in. That means once we've got variation, then we can really use the data well and say what's good, what's really good, what's not so good. We've got much better variation. So for example, these farms here, 100% of their ewes had colostrum above 26.5%. And then, you know, these farms here had most of their ewes really poor colostrum. So in total, out of our 1,295 samples, 74% of them, 3/4 of the samples, were above the 26.5% cutoff. What it shows is that ewe colostrum in Wales is really good. it's really good to get colostrum from ewes, but we can measure it. So if you've got a ewe at home and you're wanting to know, can I harvest the colostrum from this ewe? Well, a Brix is a fantastic tool. Strip her, get a drop, check it on the Brix. Is the reading above 26.5? And if the answer is yes, and she's got a good volume of colostrum, well, keep that colostrum, put it in the fridge. It will last for up to a week in the fridge. Use that good colostrum for lambs if you need colostrum. If it's less than 26.5, it doesn't mean that that's necessarily a problem for her lambs, but it does mean that's not good enough for you to keep. You can use this as a tool to work out which is the best use, which is a colostrum to keep. If you find you've got lots, much lower, then you have potentially got a problem. You've got a problem with feed. You need to do something about it, and you need to be thinking about those lambs. Arguably, the answer is not necessarily give those lambs powder. We had a few farms who made up some powder, tested it on the Brix. I have to say, they never got those samples above 20%. A powder sample is never as good as a ewes sample. Even a poor ewes sample is better often than a powder. But anyway, I'm not. This is not part of this really. Personally, I would always use colostrum from a ewe rather than from powder. I would use the Brix to measure which are the best ewes, and if they've got enough there and you can harvest some off, brilliant. And if you can use a milking machine to do that, it makes it much, much easier. So there's a lot of information here, but as I told you, lambing environment, so most of our samples were indoor lambers, and out of the indoor lambers, over 77% were good samples. Actually, the outdoor lambers, the samples weren't so good. We don't know if this is significant, that being outdoors does not necessarily mean you've got worse colostrum. There's not many samples here, and it may just be a farm factor, that it happens by chance that people who lambed outside also didn't have such good samples. It doesn't mean it's bad to lamb outside. There's just not enough data to say that. Month of lambing, most people, as you might expect, were lambing in March. And there wasn't any difference in quality of colostrum, nothing significant. So there's some really good samples in January, but hardly any farms were lambing in January. So, there's nothing we can say there. And breed of ewe, that there's nothing between, the hill ewes appeared to do well. To be honest, this could be a farm factor. All the ewes had pretty good colostrum. We were over 70% good in all the different breeds, so there was not much to put between them there. What else do we look at? Body condition score, and here I've highlighted the important ones to keep your eye. So if a ewe was less than 2, you can see it was slightly lower. Even this could have been a farm factor, but just to notice, all the better body condition scores were over 70. We're starting to see the thinner ewes had poorer colostrum, but again, it's small numbers, but that would not be surprised. We always know that a ewe at lambing less than body condition score of 2 out of 5, it's not a great surprise if her colostrum is not so good. Age, there wasn't, the ewe lambs, the shearlings, 3-4 years, they're all well over 70, brilliant. By the time they were 5 or over, potentially the colostrum is not so good. That's not hugely surprising, I wouldn't have thought, to most people. What this is quite surprising is the number of lambs. So we basically told people, where possible, to sample twin or triplet ewes. A lot of people, 434 ewes with single lambs, were tested, and apparently they were not quite so good as the twin and triplets. Even this doesn't come out in the stats later on. Is it just that there are a couple of farms that actually they got their feeding wrong of their singles, and that's why this was low? You know, it doesn't mean, I mean, there is quite a lot of data on single ewes. We also know from doing diets, a lot of people don't necessarily give enough protein to singles later on. They may be feeding them, they may be just out on basically forage. So it's just a thought. It didn't necessarily come up later, but it was interesting. And then if a ewe had less than 100%, so if she had dead lambs, again we're looking at very small numbers, but if there were less than every lamb born alive, if you see what I mean, potentially slightly less good colostrum. So in summary, we could see there's a suggestion that you get poorer colostrum in thinner ewes, in older ewes, in singles, interestingly, and in ewes that have dead lambs. That's just a suggestion. But if you've got a Brix there, you can be testing it. So don't think I'm not going to harvest colostrum off a single. Just test it. You know, this don't take too much from this. Have your own Brix and test your own ewes if you're going to harvest colostrum. Stripping ease did come up as really significant. If a ewe is hard to strip, there is a high chance, and the odds ratio is hard, so she's half as likely to have a good sample of colostrum as a ewe that is either good or average. So that is significant. So if you have not got a Brix and you're finding it hard to strip the colostrum off the ewe, there is a high chance that is not good quality colostrum. Get a Brix and then you can test it. And colostrum quality, arguably, people who said they were white, that's much less good. So just to summarise, poor colostrum if they're hard to strip, that's absolutely definite. And then potentially poorer if it was white or cream or yellow white, actually, but good if it was yellow cream. I honestly don't think we can say enough out of this data. It's a bit of a mess because of, I don't think we asked you the right question there. If we do it again, we'll use paint strips, sample colours, what you're going to colour your wall, and we'll say which paint colour is your colostrum. Now this is significant and really interesting. The farm, when we put feeding, we only got feed information back from approximately 30 farms, but it was enough to show that farms where they give concentrate feed space of more than 45 centimetres per ewe, they are more likely to have good colostrum. 84% of those samples were good compared to farms where they have smaller feed face for the ewes. And the other thing that was important is if you supplement your twins and your triplets, that was very significant, that if you don't supplement them, the colostrum is less good quality. Interesting, it didn't seem to make any difference with the singles, but as again, not very high numbers. We don't quite know what's going on with that singles there. There's not enough to tell. But supplementation of twins and triplets, as most people are doing, is very important. And the other thing which is also really important was the silage crude protein content. So those samples, silage samples where it was higher than 12% or 120 grams per kilogram dry matter, the colostrum was better than if it was less than 12% protein. That is significant. And it's significant even though we didn't have many samples in with the information on. So we couldn't actually see a difference with energy levels of silage or D values of silage or forage feed space. These were not significant, and that's likely because people make up for poor energy in silage with using concentrates. But still, energy level in silage is important. It's always worth getting your silage tested and using the best you possibly can. So what are our key findings? So key findings, we had 1,295 colostrum samples from 64 Welsh sheep farmers. That is an amazing result. It is the biggest study of ewe colostrum that we have seen published anywhere. That is really exciting. What else can we say? Ewe colostrum is good quality. we know especially it's good quality compared to dairy ewes, where there's a paper where actually somebody looked at dairy ewes. If you compare it to powder colostrum, we know it's really good quality. Out of those nearly 1,300 samples, 3/4 of them were above 26.5%. So generally speaking, ewes have good colostrum. But how you feed your flock is really important. Feed space, silage protein levels, and you must supplement appropriately. Get someone to look at your forage and to work out appropriate feeding for your ewes. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much to all of you who took part. Thank you to Farming Connect, and thank you to all the development officers and every one of those farmers, every one of you who took samples, who submitted data, and especially to Philippa, Rosie, Kate and Ginny. This is such an exciting project. We are really proud of it and the results. We've got a paper that's being published in the next week in Livestock Magazine reporting these results. It's a fantastic testimony to Welsh sheep farmers and Farming Connect that we pulled this together, that you guys collected the data, and that we've got some really useful stuff to go back to the industry with. So good luck for lambing in 2022. And if you haven't got a Brix, I suggest you get onto the internet and buy yourself one. Thanks.